Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
Welcome everybody to episode number 2 of Cowtown Cats, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse. I am once again Nicholas, here with Andy.
Hello.
And straight into our second episode. Last time was our inaugural episode, just kind of talking about where we started with Panther City, how we got interested in them. And, for episode 2, we're going to talk about the inaugural season of Panther City Lacrosse Club, just how the season went, our insights about and our thoughts about what happened. And, just kind of talk about what happened with their 2021-2022 season in the NLL. First off, the season in itself, many people thought was a success, just because, here's a team, expansion teams historically don't do very well. They'll get a win here, get a win there. And overall, if you look at the whole season, it was more of a success than people thought. They won more games than they thought people thought they would. They were fighting hard in a lot of games that people didn't think they would be in. And it made for not only a good season for the NLL, but it made for a good season for Panther City and its fans. So I guess we'll start off with the very first game. Unfortunately, they didn't even have a home game to start with last year in the season opener. Their first game was against the Philadelphia Wings, and the Philadelphia Wings were, a hard-fought team, and had obviously some good veteran players. But I think what kind of put Panther City on the map with that game was the fact that it was so close. The game ended up going into overtime, and where Panther City ended up losing, but it kind of put it out there like, hey, we're a new team, we're young, we're still trying to work with each other, we're still trying to figure out the kinks, but at the same time, like, we have what it takes to make ourselves a good team. And kind of a side story with that first game. That first game was on a Saturday night. Me and again my now fiance, we were actually driving to Houston to go to a Houston Texans game the next day, and so I streamed the entire thing on my cell phone, sitting on the dashboard, and I was just like watching it, and then we like stopped for a quick meal, and I was just kind of like eating in the car, watching it, and yeah, it was interesting at the same time, but it was so much fun because I was like, you could just tell even through my phone, I was like, that's awesome. I wish I could have been there, but yeah. So their season didn't start off the best, but they were willing to like hit it hard and really, get in the tough of things with other teams. Unfortunately, that didn't really transfer over well to game number 2, which was their first home game, where they went against Vancouver, and Vancouver, was already a tough team. A lot of people picked them to make the playoffs last year, and it didn't really mesh the way they had hoped. It was a blowout loss. It was very bad. I was there for that first game. It was a fun atmosphere. Everybody was super excited for everything, but they just didn't really come together as people had hoped. The other sad part, unfortunately, of that first game, it was televised on local television, and it was like everybody was able to watch it for free, and they were like, oh, well, we just got blown off the face of the planet, but hey, it's okay. But
well,
yeah,
if nothing else, they kept it to single digits.
well, yeah, they did keep it to single digits, but yeah, being its first experience and first exposure, you kind of hoped that it would be a better outcome, but still, I think it kind of made people notice, hey, here's Panther City. We're in Fort Worth. We're ready to, kind of rock and roll with the season. And honestly, I think it was after that you kind of got a little bit more interested. We talked about last episode, you notice kind of my posts and stuff like that. I remember you commenting, you're like, man, there's lacrosse. I mean, yeah, and I'm like, heck yeah, man. And again, you just kind of got into it a little bit more. I mean, when did you start kind of getting more into the season and paying more attention to Panther City, especially as their first season went on?
I want to say it was early 2022. There's a chance that I might have been aware from the get-go, just based on what you were posting on Facebook. But I really remember it happening early on in 2022. Just because I feel like had I found out about them right when they had their season opener, I probably would have tried to get tickets,
Right.
or maybe even tried to get a ticket package at the time. But yeah, so I honestly have you to thank for helping expose me to Panther City in the first place.
I mean, it's good. It's a good thing to get exposed to, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a rocky start, but I mean, honestly, like I said earlier, the season was in overall was a success, and that really started with the next two games because they went against Colorado, and again, it was very close. I think it was 1 or 2 point difference between the win and loss. And again, they went again. Colorado was the eventual champions last year.
Right. Hmm.
And so for this expansion team to, kind of go hard and fight against them, again, it was kind of telling of the year that was going to be for their inaugural season. Hey, we're new, but that doesn't mean we're not going to, fight hard in these games. And, they lost against them, and they lost their next game against San Diego, which again, the Seals were highly touted last year. They were expected to be in the finals because everybody was like, man, they're a tough team. And again, it was a close game, and they lost. But again, they started. That's really kind of where the connection, I think, with the team started to come together more. I mean, again, you playing in lacrosse, the more games you get to play together, the more you get to know your teammates. Do you feel like that's kind of the same thing in professional sports as well?
Yeah, I'd say so because you obviously need time to build up that chemistry, and you're thinking about. I don't remember whether this was Tracy Kelusky's first head coaching job
It
or
is
first
actually. I
coaching job
think,
overall.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So not
he's
only
been assistant coaches I believe in the past, but this was
right.
his first head coaching position.
So yeah, not only are the players trying to figure out what works best for them and their own chemistry, but you've also got Coach Kelusky figuring out the X's and O's in a
Mhm.
new environment
Well,
as well.
and I'm sure as him being, obviously a previous player and everything, all coaches, especially, when they first get started and first have that exposure as a head coach, it's a juggle of, hey, I need to teach this, but at the same time, the way I used to teach it as a player can't be the same way as I teach it now. It
Hmm.
has to be, I can say specific things to, players that played my position, but I also need to remember, hey, I need to be encompassing of the whole team.
Right.
And so, I think again, as the season went on, they really started to click a little bit more and more. So yeah, I mean, early 2020, unfortunately, January didn't go their way either. They lost, their games all in January, and it wasn't actually until February until they got their first win. And
Actually, I do think that they did manage to get one win in January.
oh, they did get one
Yeah,
in
their
there.
first one, and it happened to be on the road in overtime, which is
Oh, that
very
that is
very
right.
impressive.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
against the Riptide,
the
it
Riptide.
was.
I completely, yeah. Okay. So side story about that game. Me and my fiance met up with her dad and stepmom at a sports bar, and we were there to, I forget what we were doing. We were just like meeting up for dinner, and there was a few games they had on, and I was actually kind of hoping they would be playing, the game on one of the TVs, but
Hmm.
it was also the same weekend as like the NFL playoffs.
Right.
And so, everybody was there watching NFL games and stuff like that. And I just remember again, I will say this. My phone was my savior for watching Panther City Lacrosse last year because I streamed so many games through ESPN Plus, Any chance I got, I just was like, okay, I'll watch it on there. And of course, if I'm home, I can watch it on TV.
Hmm.
But uh, but yeah, and so I like had it playing, and I remember that game. Thank you for bringing that up because I remember watching it go to overtime, and I was like, "Oh man, here's another game that's so close.
Hmm.
I wish they would win." And then a goal happened, and the Riptide thought they won. Like they thought they had made the goal, but if I remember right, there was either a foul or the guy's foot was right on the line.
Oh, in the crease or something
Yeah,
like.
and I remember seeing that goal happen and seeing all the lights flashing because they were the Riptide were at home that game, and like immediately just like turning it off and setting it aside. I was like, gosh damn, they lost another game, and then I was like, okay, I should just double check, and I turned it back on, and by that time it was like right after they had scored their goal,
Wow.
and so but yeah, it was an overtime win, and really good first win for them. But yeah, their first home game, her home win didn't come until February, and it
Right.
was against Vancouver, who we just talked about a few minutes ago, blew them out at home with their home opener. So, and again, I was there for that game, and it was amazing. Like it was awesome. Not only kind of felt like a revenge game because they were like, "Oh, hey, you blew us out at home last time. Well, this time we're actually going to show up, and we're starting getting to like hit our stride together." And I mean, it was just you mentioned last episode that there's a camaraderie and there's like this own you have this feeling that Panther City is like they're not just my team, they're like our team. Like everybody's in it together. And after the game, they like took their time. They went around the whole, inside of the stadium, went to all the glass where everybody was like pounding on the glass and everything, and
Nice.
pretty much said that thanks for being there for that first win.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and it really kind of started kind of a almost like a home tradition of, hey, they make the home win and they actually kind of take their time and go around and almost thank the fans to be there. I mean, we were there for a few other wins throughout the season, and it just was like every time they won, it just felt like special. Especially like I said with their first inaugural season. But yeah, so that first home win against Vancouver really just kind of like started something in that team and really got them, thinking, hey, we can do this. And their next 6 games, they won 5 out of their next 6 games, and including again the Colorado Mammoth.
Yes.
They, again, you're talking about the eventual champions from last year, and Panther City, and again, that was another game I really wanted to go to, mainly because again, used to live in Colorado, so I felt like obligated, obligated to go to that game. It was really just, it was really fun, and not only that, but there was fans from Colorado that came down, and they were kind of crazy, and
Yeah, that's
then
one thing. Honestly, we'll get into the games that I went to later, but
yeah,
it really surprised. I was not expecting to see box lacrosse fans traveling on the road
right.
to see their team, or even people there that probably live in Dallas but are cheering for Georgia or whoever else. That was really cool and eye opening.
Well, yeah, and it makes you kind of realize like as small as this team might seem, they're in a bigger picture of things.
Right.
And I remember going to that Colorado Mammoth game, and there was like all these people it was like a group of them, and they came with like their jerseys, and they had their hair all colored and stuff like that, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, cool. And like it was really cool too because there was fans like across the side or across on the other side, and they all knew each other. It's almost like they went to games, up in Colorado. But side quick story, there was when we went to the get together before the season about the season tickets, somebody had mentioned that somebody from Colorado who used to go to all the Colorado Mammoth games, was a season ticket holder up there, moved to the Dallas Fort Worth area about 6 months ago, apparently, before the season started, heard about the team, bought season tickets right away. And they're
Oh, from
like,
here too? Wow.
yeah. And so I was like, that's crazy. I mean, it just shows you that there's fans everywhere. But
Now,
uh,
now I must ask. I know this is a Panther City podcast,
yeah.
but we know Panther City's your favorite team.
Mhm.
Would you say Colorado is kind of by default your second favorite?
Yeah, I will say Colorado, yes, it holds a certain spot. That's why I was kind of glad that they beat. I mean, you don't feel happy that they're beating your other favorite team. I mean, if I was to choose two of my favorite teams in the LL, obviously it'd be Panther City, Colorado.
Okay,
Um,
that's fair.
but I will say seeing Colorado win the title last year was, honestly a great thing because
Hmm.
they were really kind of ruled out of conversation when the playoffs started. When the playoffs started, everybody was very high on Buffalo. Buffalo was like the juggernaut. Everybody thought,
Mm.
okay, they're just going to steamroll everybody. They're going to go through the playoffs. They're going to win the title. And then you have Colorado, who everybody thought was going to get knocked off, in the first or second round anyway. And they just kept winning. They just kind of kept coming back and winning and winning. And then they make it to the finals, and it's like, oh, hey, they have a chance. And then, next thing you know, they're game three in Buffalo, and Colorado just does the thing that nobody thought they would do, is win the title, which in turn makes me hope maybe this year Panther City
Right.
can kind of second year everything's kind of moving a little bit better, everything's clicking a little bit better. Hopefully they can surprise a couple people this year.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we'll have a repeat, but in Texas.
Right, yeah, right. No, they can. We'll say that if Panther City wins, then it's a win for Colorado as well, right? Which is funny. I don't know if you ever pay attention to Panther City social media, but when Colorado won, they actually posted pictures on their Instagram like congratulations to the Colorado Mammoth. I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm glad they're cheering on each other. I mean, that's it shows you that maybe there's a little camaraderie going on. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously a lot of those players there's probably players on Panther City who used to play for Colorado.
Yeah.
So,
Or in my head, I'm thinking, well, Panther City did take the season series
oh
from
yeah.
Colorado, so maybe there's a little point in pride of that
Right,
as
which is
well.
crazy. Again, they lost against Colorado, and it was a close game early on. And then yeah, Panther City won their next two meetings against them, and it was one in Colorado and one at home. Winning the five of the next six after that after February really put them in an interesting spot because playoffs positions were still up in the air towards the bottom. People weren't sure who was getting in and who wasn't getting out. And so it kind of came down to those last two games. And Panther City did have a chance. All they had to do, unfortunately, was win their next two. But the last two home games, or the last two games, I believe. Yeah, they were both home games. Yeah.
Hmm.
The last two home games were both losses. And after that first loss, you kind of got the feeling, okay, well, it would take a lot for them to make the playoffs, like a lot of other teams losing. But yeah, I think the team knew, especially by that last game, they were like, hey, we know there's probably a very long shot that we're not going to make, pretty good shot that we're not going to make it. So let's just kind of go out in a blaze of glory, and again, really fought hard in that last game, but unfortunately, it was a loss. So they ended up, with an overall record of 7-11, which again, people didn't believe that they could win that many. I think preseason, estimates for them were maybe two or three wins,
Hmm.
and they ended up with seven. So, I mean, again, that's kind of the season in a nutshell. Now, you said you kind of came in, early 2022, and obviously you went to your first game and started kind of paying attention a little bit more after that. I mean, what was your feeling as the season went on and the more games you watched?
Well, it's funny you reference that winning 5 out of six, or I guess 6 out of 7 in that one stretch.
Mhm.
Because the first game that I went to, as well, the only games I went to last season happened to be those two last games
The two
where
last
where
games.
they were, angling for playoff position. And even though they lost both of them, they were pretty close throughout, if my memory serves correctly. Like
Hmm.
the game against Georgia was really fun. And I had never seen box lacrosse before. All my experience had been playing or watching field lacrosse, and so just the energy of the indoor crowd and seeing how physical the sport was really new to me. And I'm trying to think. The last game, from what I remember,
Hmm.
a few guys that might not have gotten as much run got to play more minutes that
Hmm.
night, and yet it was still competitive, which I love to see.
Right.
And so that obviously that kind of played into what we're doing now. Because had I not gone to those two games, then I probably wouldn't have been like, oh man, this league and this team is awesome. And here we are now doing a podcast. So
Right. Well, and like you mentioned, it kind of hooks you in. Like you start watching, you're like, man, this is exciting, and so the newness of everything. But yeah, there was a lot. Honestly, there was a lot of bright spots from last year. A lot of good players. I mean, Thompson. Thompson was a vet who came in last year, and he led that team's spirit pretty much throughout the
mhm,
season. And he was a really integral part into helping that team kind of find its identity. And
absolutely.
for that, I think Panther City fans will always be grateful for what he started. But there was also some guys that really kind of took that mentality of, hey, we're gonna scrap and fight and claw through every game, and went running with it. I mean, for me, I there's obviously some players that are highlighted last year. There's, I mean, we'll get into it here in a second, but Patrick Dodds was just off the charts crazy with his goals, was in the running for Rookie of the Year. But for me, I think the person I think I attached myself more to and wanted to really root for was Nathan Grinnan. I
Mm,
thought he especially towards the end of the year, he kind of took that mentality or that essence of the team and was just like, I'm a fighter. That last game I'll never forget. He was like getting pushed around because he's kind of a smaller guy.
yeah.
He's not as tall as some of the other players, but he like he'll fight them. And yeah, he was kind of getting pushed around. And he finally started pushing back, and like I can't remember if he got it. I don't think he got ejected that game, but he got a few penalties for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He got in the box.
And I think he just, I don't know, something kind of drew me to him. I was just like, man, that's my guy. That's the guy I want on my team.
Yeah, from what I remember, both him and Dodds were in the running for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and honestly, as I told you, outside the podcast, I was kind of thinking Dodds would win just because, again, it was the essence of, here's this rookie, but here's a rookie on an expansion team who's doing these things.
Right.
I mean, you can kind of talk about it a little bit, but I mean, he had kind of a crazy year, and even some games where he had like multiple goals. I mean, what did you find up on him?
So yeah, I've got the team leaders in terms of points, goals, and assists, and Dodds e Dodds edged out Will Malcolm for the lead in points with 84.
Oh,
He had he had 26 goals, which was third on the team, but he led the team in assists with 58. So just a really well-rounded offensive player, and just watching them live and seeing some of the passes he was slinging around, either no look or behind the back, it was incredibly impressive for me to see, and he was definitely one reason why my eyes are kind of open to what what lacrosse could be like.
right, and he's got some size behind it. I mean,
Hmm.
he doesn't hold anything back when he shoots, and I think that
Right.
makes him, dangerous person for on the offensive side. But yeah, that's why I'm kind kind of excited for the next year to see kind of his progression, kind of see this team's progression. Again, we mentioned it before, but seeing them grow more together, having an entire off season, getting to know each other more. I actually started following Patrick Dodds on Instagram, and he does a lot of stuff outside, but he got to hang out with his teammates more, and I think it's just good for the team and their togetherness. I mean, I know that's
Hmm.
kind of a weird saying, but it's true that they, you know, having their first off season together kind of helps the team understand, their highs and lows. But yeah, so Patrick Dodds was up for Rookie of the Year. Unfortunately, didn't win. But you know who did win, and that would be the coach winning Coach of the Year, Coach TK. I mean, the craziness about it is again an expansion team,
Hmm.
and when you think Coach of the Year, you don't think first year head coach expansion team. You
Right.
think of here's this, somebody who's bringing a team together and making a run at the playoffs and stuff. And honestly, I think that's kind of what won him Coach of the Year was getting a team and getting them into playoff contention with their
Yes,
first year.
and especially after, those first 9 games where the record was 1-8, I think a lot of teams that might might not have as strong leadership might just kind of bow out and be like, okay, this this was expected. This is our first year. It's going to be rough, so let's just do what we can. But no, they stuck through it and they put together that nice string of wins throughout the middle of the season to get them
Well,
back into things. And I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. It's a testament to his leadership and the team that they weren't the worst team in the league. They weren't the worst team in the division. So
yeah,
they definitely defied expectations.
right. And it's that those kind of expectations that kind of lead into this year's like, hey, growing from that. Um, you know, where can we go from there? Playoffs? Can we go to double digit wins? It'll be interesting to see where that inaugural season and off season together, and them, like I said, him winning Coach of the Year, having this the strength of getting to know each other more and playing together more, and seeing where that goes, and it'll be fun. I mean, again, we're a few days away from spoiler alert. We're a few days away from season opener, and
Oh yeah, I'm
uh,
pumped.
I know I keep getting notifications of like, yeah, hey, don't forget season opener. There's 4 days or 3 days or whatever. There's however many days until the season opener, and I'm like, yep, I'll be there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, overall, their first season, yes, we always wish for a big push and a playoff push, and obviously they almost had that. But for me personally, I mean, it was just it was a great experience. It was a great time to get to know the team. To be honest, what about for you?
Yeah, and speaking of that, they had that little kind of thank you to the fans event after that final game. Like even though it was a loss and probably didn't end the way they wanted it to, they still came out and were really appreciative of everyone. I think the everyone from like the owner, the maybe the GM
Mhm.
and Coach TK all came out and said some nice words, and it was just great being able to talk to the players personally, see how they like things down in Texas, what they thought of like the local barbecue, talking to them
Mhm.
about the differences between field and box lacrosse, what their off seasons like. It was just a really down to earth event and a down to earth team.
Mhm. Well, and uh, obviously we're looking forward to that, those kind of things happening this year as well.
Right. Hmm.
So the expectations are high. The excitement is high. I can't wait for the season to start. I know you can't wait for the season to start. All that being said, next thing you know, the season will be here. And for our next episode, we will be going over the next season, the new season, season number 2 for Panther City Lacrosse Club. Talk about kind of what our expectations are. Hopefully, what the ending results and what ending records will be, and kind of what we want to see from Panther City Lacrosse. So, well, this will wrap it up for this episode. Thank you again for listening. Again, we are the Cowtown Cats, and we are about all things Panther City Lacrosse. Again, I am Nicholas.
I'm Andy.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Cool. Cheers, y'all.